Youth Education Alliance was a youth-led intergenerational group that organized DC Public High School students around education change in the district. Our activities, we did a wide range of things, from kind of running what we call all-city meetings, where we brought young people from across the city together to talk about education issues impacting them, to running leadership chapters in high schools east of the river, Anacostia, Woodson, and Baloo. We started out with a survey of 300 students, and we were asking them what were the most pressing problems facing DC Public High School students. And when the young people did the data, kind of 9 issues emerged for us around kind of serious stuff around facilities, bathrooms, school lunches, engaging curriculum, teachers, guidance counselors, college prep, all of those things. And so what happened was we used that to create what we call the Education Justice Platform, and that became the basis of our campaigns. And so our first campaign was around the issue of bathrooms in DC Public schools. And at the time, one of the schools that we were working in, they had one bathroom open for the females, one bathroom open for the males, in a school of 1,200 students. The bathrooms were in the basement. And it was creating a problem where students, one, were late to class, trying to go to the bathrooms, creating tensions between the students and the teachers. But then the surprising thing was, when we looked at it, we found out that they weren't the only school, and that it was actually a very widespread problem. That was one of the first issues that we took on. After that was school lunches, and then from there we went on to to organize around the school modernization campaign, and then our last campaign before we merged was around guidance counselors in schools. Outside of the brilliant young leaders that we had an opportunity to work with, I would say our work around the school modernization campaign and winning $3.2 billion for school reform was our biggest victory to date. Particularly how the campaign emerged, the role of young people in it, and then also I think there was the real important moment where there was a real sense of justice for those groups, particularly when there was some tension around, as we were winning, what the order of the schools were going to be in terms of which schools got renovated first. And it was a very broad-based coalition, so there were parents, east of the river and west of the park who were together. And I remember one of the parents saying in the meeting, when they started to talk about that, just kind of very strongly, the schools that need it the most should get it, and those schools are the schools east of the river. And that really did something for the young people, really energized them, and really gave them a sense of kind of hope in what the district could look like, because you had these parents who on some levels had access to be able to catapult their school forward in the line, saying, no, we'll wait our turn in line so that other students who deserve that quality schools get it first. Our biggest piece was we used to walk into a school or hang around a school. We used to just talk to students, and we would ask students who was the coolest teacher in the school. We would wait till we got the same name 3 times, and then that's when we would go see that teacher try to figure out when that teacher's free time was, or we'd ask a student to introduce us to that particular teacher, and we would get him or her to agree to let us do a Know Your Rights workshop in their class, which taught students around their student bill of rights. And so the workshop was very interactive. They had a video, and that's how we would recruit students to join YAY. We also did word of mouth. Members, that was part of every kind of membership, was trying to recruit others. We ran leadership chapters in schools, in addition to doing kind of other activities to build out our membership base. I think we use the identity of one, students, and then I think for the most part DC Public High School students, and what it meant for them as public students, and what their rights were, kind of engaging with a public institution. And then I think also just kind of, so that began to shift in terms of how young people were relating to each other, but it was very much about young people, students, and sometimes east of the river, it depended on the school or the particular thing. But I think that what they all shared was they were all high school students. They were all high school students who had dreams of going on to college and dreams of being successful. And I think that's also what really brought a lot of young people to the table. This idea that they realized at a certain point that the education that they were receiving wasn't matching their particular aspirations in life and where it was going to land them. And so, so we were able to kind of cut identity in a lot of different ways. We also were very clear about kind of the young people that we wanted at the table. So we wanted everybody. We wanted the 4.0s, we wanted the no point O's, we wanted the straight kids, we wanted the LGBTQ kids, we wanted the kids who spoke, standard King's English, to kids who didn't very speak English at all. So we were very trying to cut those, and we felt like our issues really touched all of those young people, and those were all issues that were important to them. For us, it was actually a very interesting experience because I think that in the city, to hear from young people was a really exciting option. A lot of times, city officials will tell you that they see the same amount of advocates or the same advocates year after year. And young people add value to most conversations, and being able to shift, one, the content of the conversation, and then two, there's also this kind of factor, like, you're going to really tell that to a young person's face that you're going to close their school. You're really going to tell a young person that they need to be locked up. And so there was this kind of moral authority that young people were able to exercise, that they brought to coalitions, that made it refreshing and exciting. I think that young people being involved in the school modernization campaign also gave that a lot of wings. We saw that also in our work around juvenile justice and closing Oak Hill and New Beginnings. It had been a campaign that had stalled, and it got kind of breathed life into it when they started to use youth organizing as an approach. That's always an interesting process as an organizing group, because there's some moments where you are very antagonistic to your target, to your to the person in government who has the power to make a decision. And then there are other times where you're an ally. And so we always adapted this posture of trying to be like a critical ally. So there will be moments where we might feel like we have to slap them around a particular issue, or challenge them on a particular issue or stance. And then there were other opportunities where we served as a kind of a critical ally, and to be like, you know what, this is really not going to fly with young folk. You should tweak it here, change it here, and think about it that way. I think one of the funniest stories I remember was around the bathroom campaign, and we were trying to get, God rest his soul, the guy from Ward 8 who used to be the State Board of Ed, Rutledge, I can't remember his name, but he would not meet with the students at all. He kept dodging us, and so they came up with a plan where somehow they found his schedule and they would follow him to the meetings for about 2 weeks, and every time asking him, will you meet with the Youth Education Alliance around bathroom issues, will you meet? And when he finally did, and he sat down and he saw the evidence that we presented, he flipped and became an instant ally. And when we and later we have video in our footage, the Yay video stand up, we have footage of him like really championing the cause and talking about the hours that young people put into surveying bathroom conditions, and talking about it and saying, we really need to listen to these young people. They know what they're talking about. So he went from completely ignoring us to being our biggest champion, and that particular measure got passed. We're a nonprofit, so we're a 501c3, so we're able to leverage some support from foundations, particularly Community Foundation early on. Hill Snowden has been a critical ally to youth organizing in DC. But then I think a lot of our resources really came from the creativity young people brought to the projects, their energy, their voice. I think we could have had, you see organizations with a lot of money, a lot of resources, not being able to move anything. And we were able to move stuff in the city with this kind of young people, their power, their energy, their belief in their particular cause, and the belief that they can make change. So. It was like, what else are we going to do? I think, one of the things we were really good at in terms of doing that was, one, building culture amongst and connections amongst young people so that they felt like they were supported. and felt like they had family away from family. And that helped with some of the really rough times. I think for us as staff, having trying to really develop and invest in relationships with young people from the front end really help carry us through some really difficult times. I think practicing a level of transparency and real honesty about kind of where we were struggling, and where we needed help, and being open to that support helped us through. But I really think, just for me personally, it was just understanding the resiliency of the young people that I was organizing with, and realizing on some levels that the stuff that I was being challenged with was nothing to the daily struggle that they were facing just trying to get an education. I guess the perceived homogenous racial characteristics of DC public schools oftentimes played an issue in that, and sometimes we would find students blaming themselves for issues that had nothing to do with them, or like bathroom conditions. Like they would be like, "Oh, the bathrooms are bad because students make them bad," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, a young person throws toilet paper, but they don't like bang pipes and cause ceilings to rot and rust. Like that's beyond students." I do think it was interesting for us to think about kind of where education is working in the city, and to look at like a Banneker and a School Without Walls and a Wilson, and to know that that there are places where one, black youth are learning, but also being very clear around their racial dynamics. That when we looked at the data for white students, this DC public schools served them well, and so we were clear like, yo, DC public schools actually can educate young people. They educate young white people very well. What's happening with our schools that is not happening? That led us to some questions around the fundamental problems of funding equity and how that plays out in schools, school climate, and really opened us kind of after the school modernization campaign to kind of really look at that and begin to look at what are the supports and services that our students need to be able to succeed like all other students. We were always kind of tied to national movements that were happening in other cities, so we would always learn little tricks and little things from other campaigns. I would always be really good around making sure taking a cadre of our young people up to Baltimore to observe the Baltimore Algebra Project, and for them to really see what youth-led organizing happen. Because it would be one thing for me to say it, and they're just kind of like, you're an adult, you're supposed to say that. But for them to see your other young people organizing, leading workshops, they would have that aha moment like, oh, okay, you just wasn't blowing smoke in my ear. We actually can do this. We actually can be doing more. We should be doing more. I think it also helped inform like the guidance counselor campaign. Like one of our first things that we did was we talked to one of the groups in Boston who had just won a campaign victory, and so that was always part of our process, was in every campaign trying to look out and see where have young people won this issue and what did they do to win that, and reaching out to those groups and asking to learn from them what they did to get victories. Yeah, I think that that youth organizing in the district is probably one of the city's greatest treasures and untold stories. There's a lot of real history around youth organizing. Even not even kind of usually like young people, we jump back like to the 60s, but really from like 96 up until now, there's been some really tremendous things happening in the city that young people have moved the city on, that we don't really talk about, that we haven't really acknowledged. Again, as new school buildings get built in the city, that was a result of young people. The rehabilitation of closing of Oak Hill and the opening of New Beginnings, that was driven by young people, and so and we continue to influence and have an effect on policy, and continue to lead organizing in a very strong way, and one that really needs to be celebrated and really lifted up. So I'm really excited to be a part of this process and to help at least tell some of the story around kind of youth organizing, how young people have helped to shape the city, helped to move it forward, and to make it a better place for all DC residents.